I'd like to welcome Stefano, who is also who is VP and fellow at Adobe and the director of AR, and also a distinguished fellow of Fellow Fund. And he can introduce us Metaverse and also GameFi. Okay, so thank you, Stefano. Please.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. And sorry for not being there. I'm still sick a little bit today. My name is Stefano Corazza. I'm VP and Fellow for Augmented Reality at Adobe. I spend a lot of time talking about Metaverse. And so today, given that we have, I believe, only like 25 minutes, and there's a lot to talk about, I'm just touching on a few aspects around like categorizing all these buzz around the Metaverse and GameFi, and then maybe we can just have a conversation. So I'll start with just a few slides. And I always start trying to categorize what people are talking about. And so on the Metaverse buzz, we have done a lot of work at Adobe to help people figure out what this is. And so one way to look at a map of the metaverses is basically what level of abstraction and how connected to the world they are. And so if you go all the way to the right, you have the current like Google and Apple maps where they already have some augmented reality in there that is useful for like wayfinding and that kind of stuff. And is just one-on-one correspondence with the real world. And then you have the opposite extreme of that, where like it's completely virtual and virtually limitless, like what you can find in Meta and Sandbox. And then you have also stuff in the middle, AR layers of content on top of the real world. You can have as many as you like what Niantic and Adobe is doing, or perfect virtual copies of the real world, like living cities. So there's a lot of flavors of metaverses that we are looking at. And also you can go from one to another. So you can be part of an AR experience, tap on something, and then you get immersed into a totally virtual world. And so this is an interesting taxonomy when looking at the metaverse, trying to understand what that is. And then another way to look at it is to really look at the stack. And so there are basically 5 different levels, if you want. This is something that you can find in our white paper, adobe.com/metaverse. But there are basically 5 layers. There's the experiences, which is actually what people are consuming. Those experiences are delivered by devices. Some now are more like on the mobile side, but they will be more and more wearable. And then there's a whole commerce platform on top of that. We will talk a little bit more around that. And then in order to deliver this experience, you need engines. You need Unity, Unreal, Adobe Mercury is what we use for like short form delivery of experience. There's many more. Some are proprietary or some are like open, like, Babylon JS, big fan of that for sure. And then everything is fed by the creative ecosystem. Developers, artists, they are basically creating the content to populate those metaverses. And so the cycle of hype always kicks in, and then people think like, oh my God, I have to be ready as a company for the metaverse. And then they realize, oh, it's not as big as I thought. And then it does become as big as they thought, but just a few years later. And so we always go in this chicken and egg problem of the content versus the platform. You need awesome content to get consumers to join the platform. And then the more consumers you have on the platform, the more content developers will get involved. And so that's why, there's usually we see a spike with the hype that brings a lot of developers, maybe consumers, and then trying to like bootstrap this flywheel that is ultimately what we need. And so we are seeing this working pretty well now with like mobile AR and VR, but of course we think it's going to be like a step function once we have wearable devices coming in. And then another big aspect that I think is connecting the metaverse with GameFi is the concept of portability, right? Because we had metaverses like virtual worlds, decades ago, like Second Life or IMView, right? Those are like great examples, but they didn't have all those ramifications into the economy because also those assets were now portable. And so I think that is what is creating massive opportunities, of using blockchain technologies and really, with NFTs creating like new type of businesses that we could not foresee before. And so now we're gonna just dive just a little bit deeper on the concept of portability with a few examples. So everything starts from like a file format. And so you need to have portable file formats to take assets from one metaverse to another. That's like the minimum requirement. And so we are seeing two big efforts in the industry. GLTF is the most established 3D asset format for delivery. And we are seeing that now being expanded to include complete experiences and interactivity. So that's unprecedented. Adobe is part of creating those specifications with the Kronos Group. And then we are seeing like USDZ being pushed by Apple and Pixar to do exactly the same. And the two are like quite aligned. And so they can deliver the portability of an experience from one metaverse to another. Those are like short form. They're not like 25 levels first-person shooters, but they're like, I have a car, the car will open the doors. If I go closer, the engine will make a sound, assuming it's a combustion engine. And then there will be some functionalities, and maybe I can change the color and just interact with it. Those are like the type of first short form interactive experiences that we envision being portable in the metaverse. And so you have two axes basically to this portability. The first one is the technical portability of the experience. So file formats are key on that. And the second one is portability of the IP. And that's how blockchain really stepped into this and really made a big change, because now I can track the ownership of NFTs that I buy in one metaverse and then take them to another one. And this is a massive change, because it's like before, it's like buying a pair of shoes that you can only wear on Sundays versus like something that you own and you can wear whenever you want, right? And so people will be spending a lot more money if they own the asset and if they can take it with them wherever they want, because that asset will define who they are. And so I think that's going to be a big change. I want to give an example of this at a company that I'm advising. I'm a big fan of, Ready Player Me. How basically they created this avatar system platform for the metaverse, where like they enable people to integrate their SDK. And so they were able to deliver portability of characters and avatars between metaverses. And then every metaverse is still free to develop its own economy and monetize through NFTs or other ways, and then using blockchain to guarantee the portability of the IP between worlds. So once the technical portability is delivered by the SDK, then people can decide to play in the game and then allow users to take their avatar or their purse or their jacket into other metaverses, increasing basically the value of those assets for everybody and allowing to the player the ability to own it. And I think these are aspects that are typical of GameFi. And so maybe I'll go just in details of what the main ones are. And so there's definitely like player ownership. It's a new concept that didn't exist, a decade ago. And that is changing the game. There's also assets-based games. And so assets, they are key part of the game and they're like tying into like the gameplay. And that's how people can do play to earn. So we have seen a lot of things flourishing in the ecosystem as crypto technology matures, where, instead of saying, get off the couch and get a job, actually you are doing your job by being on the couch and you're making money. And so this is really changing the way things work. And it's an obvious complement to the metaverse, where it will be not just a place where we hang out, but a place where we can earn money and we can run businesses. And I think Axie was probably the best example. And as many times happens, it's a big spike and then things crash. And then people say, oh, why did it crash? And then, 5 years later, it becomes like the standard, right? So that was a great example of how Axie through a game improved the life of a lot of people during the pandemic. And I think it's just the scratching the surface, and there's going to be more and more of that to come. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to cover, mostly to really stimulate some good discussion, and then maybe we can open up for discussion now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. So, any question for Stefano? Kish, please.
Hi, Stefano. Thanks for sharing that. My question is around GameFi and more on like just blockchain gaming. So I think I probably want to define what the category I'm asking about. So I'm not asking about the metaverse worlds. I'm asking about card games and Web3 games which don't have a 3D component. So I'm talking about Web3 games, but the 2D ones. Where do you feel they're in the life cycle? Do you think the ecosystem is early, it has matured, and then what do you think are the key roadblocks for those games to go mainstream if you think they're early?
I see. That's a good question. So, and just as a disclaimer, you're asking a 3D guy, so I may be biased. I think there's like those are like two separate axes, right? There's a lot of success and potential for all 2D games as well as 3D games. Just the new hardware tends to favor all the 3D content because now everything can be immersive, but it doesn't mean that all the beautiful 2D ecosystem that is out there is less important. I think they will all coexist, and maybe there will be like different embodiment of the same game in a 3D scenario or in like a 2D web, card game scenario. So they are all, I think, coexisting. They're all like cross-pollinating each other. And I think, people will learn from 2D games that have been around for a long time, how to leverage blockchain to bring, IP across 3D metaverses. In fact, there's a lot of concept that is actually more complicated to do. And there are situations where the technicalities are actually impeding this smooth blockchain-based portability of the asset that you don't have in the 2D world. So I think the 2D world actually has an advantage because it basically is not so tied into the gameplay. I give an example. I buy, like they had a fantastic drop on FFTs about the pirates, steampunk pirates on Ready Player Me. Amazing characters. A rig can have 60 bones, right? And it's a lot, and maybe also a facial blend shape. So if I am there looking at it when I bought it, it looks amazing. But if I'm trying to go to a concert, potentially in something like Fortnite, and there's like 50,000 people there, like the engine and the network just cannot handle 60 bones and all the blend shapes. And so I have to like gracefully downgrade the resolution of my avatar. And then all of a sudden, do I still own it, right? Because I bought something that was like super high quality, but now the engine is basically degrading it into something that is different. So how is the ownership going to work, and like who's controlling that process? So there's a lot of like open issues that in a 2D card game, for example, I don't have to deal with. So I think there is an advantage in the simplified ecosystem that the 3D will have a lot to learn from.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a follow-up, but I probably can take that offline if that's okay with you.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you have there my Twitter or LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you.
Let's have a last question for Stefano or anyone. Cool. I think that's it. So maybe we can share the contact information of our fellows. You can follow up offline, right? Thank you very much, Stefano. Thank you.
Thank you.